This is an uncensored podcast about sex, sexuality, gender, and body stuff. Listener discretion is advised. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the person or persons sharing them. Some names have been changed to protect the anonymity of its participants. Hello. Oh, good. Hi, friends. Oh, good. You're here. Sorry, I was not expecting you. I I thought I was alone, and you've caught me at a very compromising time. Actually, I was just surprised that my recording software was working because it's been glitching, and I've been bitching about it. Oh, it's so late. How are you guys feeling? I'm Drew Michael. That's how I am. And this is Make Sex With Me, a podcast where we're rarely getting enough sleep. And also a podcast where we... What was I going to say? Oh, are excited, are all sorts of fired up this week because of the Democratic National Convention. So many exciting progressive politicians speaking at the DNC this year. And I am so happy. So happy that Kamala Harris is going to be our next president. Very, very excited. It is the most interesting thing because it is would be so wonderful to have the first female president and have the first female president be a woman of color. It would be just really cool. It would be the absolute polar opposite if Trump won. The absolute polar opposite if Trump and JD Vance were the next administration. First of all, I didn't even know who JD Vance was. I thought he was like a used car salesman. That's what it kind of sounds like. Turns out he is a politician. Also, he wrote the Hillbilly. Okay, I remember when this happened. Pretty sure they made that book into a movie, and I kept going, I know that's not how they spell eulogy. Is it Hillbilly Eulogy? And I think my friend was like, no, that's not how you spell eulogy. I was like, oh, it's elegy. Hillbilly Elegy? Now I'm wondering if it's pronounced elegy or if it's like a completely different word. You know that one Asian name? It's like pronounced Wen, but it's like spelled Nagoyan. Is that a thing, or am I mixing that up? Is Nagoyan actually a name? It's too late to know. We were already recording. You guys, it's such a good time. It's hilarious, okay? It's hilarious. I've been laughing about it for days. And by laughing, I mean like just my stomach's been in knots. Um, every fucking thing is up in the air right now. We literally don't know if we're going to have the best outcome for president or literally the worst. Um, we don't know if the big one is coming. Is that what they call it? That like explosion that's gonna happen. That's gonna create like a terrible earthquake, and like California will just like fall into the ocean, and then like the whole planet will be covered in ash or something. I guess there's always that possibility too. What if like Trump wins and then the next day the big one hits? That's crazy. And then the only thing that survives is Trump and cockroaches. That's an interesting cartoon, like adult cartoon prompt. Like I think somebody needs to make this happen. Um yeah. No, but in my personal life, I have auditioned for a show. Okay, this is hilarious. I auditioned for this musical called Evil Dead the musical. Apparently Evil Dead is like a cult classic. Like it's a was a movie and it's been remade several times, and like then there's like a series or something, and it's like this like man named Ash who has like a beautiful girlfriend, or I don't know. In the musical, two couples and then Ash's sister, who's by herself, go to a cabin in the woods, and they find like a book, and they read from it, and they unleash like all hell. It's like a bunch of like demons come out of the book and like possess everybody, and then everyone murders each other, and it's like super cool. And it's like a really funny musical. It's like really bloody. I auditioned for it, and it's at this theater I've been itching to do something at. And they finally started paying their actors. So I would actually be paid to act slash dance and sing for the first time in my entire life. Literally never been paid to perform. And I feel like that's hard to say, but I'm pretty sure that's true in my entire life. And I'm almost 40. And I feel like for the first time ever, I've believed that I could audition for a show that would actually pay me. Because I know so many people that perform for a living. And yeah, turns out I'm not a piece of shit. I'm actually good at shit. And I've been trained, and there's a lot of room for improvement, but I'm pretty fucking wonderful, turns out. So there's that. That's exciting. Um, but anyway, I don't know if I'm going to be in that. Uh, the funniest thing about that is I'm sitting there at the audition in the lobby filling out my application or whatever, and this guy comes up and says, "Hey, I'm the like the special effects guy for the show, and I'm supposed to tell everybody that like you need not audition if you are claustrophobic, or like you can audition, but like just let us know because we won't cast you in certain roles." And I'm thinking to myself, oh, are you gonna lock me into a fucking closet or something? um and they're like, no, no, no. He said, we're gonna have to do a cast of your head. And I'm thinking, I know there's like at least one person who has their head cut off and they have a fake head, and then they take a chainsaw and like they or go at the head and it starts shooting out blood or whatever. But only one person, and from the version I saw, only one person gets their head cut off. So I was like, well, are you making like fake heads for everyone just like for fun? Because like maybe we don't do that. Maybe I don't have to have my head covered in plaster or whatever. And he's like, no, it's because we're using prosthetic makeup. And apparently, when you do prosthetic makeup, you want it to like fit the face and the head like really closely, and like be not look like a fake mask on a head or whatever. We want it to look like, because everyone becomes a demon at some point, and then they have to have like a demonic face, so they have to have prosthetic makeup for that purpose. And I'm like, okay. Also, the funniest thing is that we have this prosthetic makeup on for like the one and only like super dancey dance scene. Like everyone who's been possessed for the most part dances around the room, and they like are wearing a prosthetic face. So it's like going to be so hot. Also, like, everyone gets covered in blood for every show. Also, like, I have no idea how many shows there are. They keep adding them, and it's like there's going to be like 100 shows. But I get paid one lump sum at some point. So whether they add shows or not, I'm still only making one fee, it turns out. That's how that be. But it's still better than not being paid. And I'm so excited about it. And I think I could mind over matter having my head covered in plaster, because I'm so excited about the possibility of doing the show. Even though I'm not even that excited about the show itself, I'm just excited about working with this theater and the kinds of people that are going to be in the show. I'm just so excited to meet them, and it's going to be really fun. Now, hold on, you might say. Aren't you trying to like get a job somewhere else, possibly in Michigan? Oh yeah, that's true. That's another thing that's up in the air. At the same time, I have done a second interview. I've done one interview and then a second interview for a position at a job, we'll say. I'll be super vague about it, in Michigan, in Detroit. I would have to move. I have no idea how I'm going to make that happen, but I need to do everything I can to try to make it happen, because I've got to get out of South Carolina, especially if Trump is our president again. I'm going to need to flee for my own safety to the nearest blue state. Purple is not safe enough. I need to be in a blue state. And Detroit, turns out, is literally, there's just a tiny little river between it and Canada. That's literally called the Detroit River. I think you can see Canada from Detroit. It's not like a Sarah Palin statement. It's like true. Um, Also, that might not be true, but I think it is. I think it is. Um, so I would be real close to another country if shit needs to happen, right? If I need to like literally leave the country. I should probably renew my passport. Oh, fuck. Anyway, just another thing I have to pay for. So there's a possibility that I'm going to have a third round of interviews. That's not been scheduled yet. And so that's exciting. That would be a dream. That would be a dream. I'm extremely scared of it. It's like literally all these things are happening right now that I want so bad. And also they can't all happen. Like, I don't think I can be in this play and get that new job. But maybe I can. I don't know. The only shitty part is they're gonna announce casting like at the end of this week, and I definitely won't know if I have that job by the time they announce casting, and I absolutely have to be here still until like at least the first week of November. So I'm really hoping that I really don't want to let this theater down. Oh God. Can we just talk some more about me, please? All right, guys, shut the fuck up. Honestly, Drew, we don't even care. We understand everything's up in the air for you, and our lives are just so great. We never have any problems. You're the only one who has problems, Drew. I know. I know I am. It's really fucked up. I am going to talk to you guys today about something very, very interesting that I watched. And before I tell you about that, I want you to rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Literally, wherever you listen. Spotify, Apple, Goog, 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 Goog. What's that called? Google Podcasts. I think there's something called Spreaker. Maybe not anymore. Hold on. My foot is so asleep, I don't think I have a foot anymore. Oh, okay. I was just sitting cross-legged for literally that entire intro. Now it's gonna be tingly. Oh my god, I have to get to a position where I don't move it at all, so I don't feel tingles. Okay, wait. I'm just gonna put both feet on the floor. Okay, good. I'm so professional. I let my best friend who was in town listen to last week's episode, and I was like, by the way, this is the worst episode I've ever put out. And it was funny how bad it was. And she was laughing, and then I think inside of her head she was going yeah, this is shit. I don't know if it was or not, but it made me feel really self-conscious. And now I have this little voice in the back of my head being like, nobody's listening, nobody cares. So fun. So let's get on with it. Oh, also, if you guys want to email us at makesexwithmepodcast@gmail.com, you can. I would love that. I would come. I would just come. It would be so hot. Today we're talking about the movie 1946, and the full title, hold on, I did have it in front of me, and then I had to restart my computer because I don't remember if I used Safari or if I used Chrome. Oh, I used Safari. 1943, sorry, start all over again. 1946, and the full title is 1946, The Mistranslation That Shifted Culture. And then the question is, what if the word homosexual was never meant to be in the Bible? Dun, dun, dun. I've been wanting to watch this for a while. I actually paid, I don't know, $7 or something to watch it on their website. It says they have a road tour for 2024. They're going to mostly just be in big cities, it looks like. But that seems really cool. Oh, very exciting. It looks like they're traveling a lot in the South, which I think is important. 1946 is the name of the movie, and it's an important year because apparently in 1946, a version, and don't ask me to tell you what version, a version of the Bible was put out. It was like an American Standard Version or something like that. I don't know if that's what they call it. ASV, that sounds familiar. It was put out, and the people that reviewed it, it was like a panel of white men who reviewed it and translated it from whatever it had been in before. I think there were obviously English versions before, but they were I guess, I don't know if they went back to the original Greek. Apparently, the Bible was originally in Greek. Don't ask me if that's true or anything about it, because that's just what I've heard. I might as well be Muslim. I know so little about the Bible. I'm sure Muslims know more about the Bible than I do. And I was raised fucking Catholic. So I clearly have an aversion to the text. I don't want to read it. I once thought I would read it. Got in, I don't know. I got in deep in, what is it called? Generations or Revelations or whatever the first fucking book is. And it was I always have this joke that it was just too name droppy. It was then there was Judah, and Judah lived for 7,000 years, and he had 200 sons, and their names were, it's oh no, I don't have that many friends. I definitely am not going to live that long. And it's not, I was being dramatic. I think like he had, and I don't know, if, I know Judah's in the Bible. He was not in that book probably. Shut up. Just shut up. Um, Numbers are fun to make up. That's all I have to say. I should work for Fox News. So this group of men, similar to like how a bunch of men wrote all of the sections of the Bible, but not so similar in the fact that this group of men here, I think they were at Yale when they did it, and they were all in the same room. I don't know if you guys know this, but like the different sections of the Bible were written by different people, and like they were written like hundreds and hundreds of years apart. Like none of like Matthew didn't know fucking John from Peter or shit like that. Also, this blows people's minds, but it has to be said constantly. Jesus didn't write any part of the Bible, which is interesting because he was a living, breathing person according to Christianity. And wouldn't you think he would have written a book? But he didn't. And the first book of the Bible wasn't written until like hundreds and hundreds of years after Jesus' death. Also, there's a bunch of parts of the Bible, or there's a bunch of like other books that weren't included in the Bible. They're just somewhere else. Seltzer. Also, there's a New Testament and an Old Testament. And I'm told that the New Testament isn't like an addendum, or it isn't like it might be like an addendum, but it's not like a rewriting of the first one. Also, like in my mind, I'm like, was there at one point just the Old Testament and it was called like the Bible? And then they extended it, like they doubled it by creating a new one? Also, who decided what books were included? And where are the other books? And are they in another kind of book that like we can read somewhere? Or have they all been lost to time? It's just very crazy. Anyway, the point is that in 1946, this group of men apparently translated the Bible into a version that they felt was like the most accurate translation. And they didn't do this work in 1946, but it was published in 1946. Apparently, they had been working on this for like years and years and years before 1946, and then in 1958, a Bible scholar from Canada, Canada saves the day, was reading this version of the Bible and decided he would contact one of the men from Yale that, transcribed it or whatever, translated it, to let him know that, like, they had mistranslated it. That, like, there was never the word homosexual, and you guys added it, but it, like, didn't, that's not the best word. Like, you meant to say, like, perverts, and instead you said homosexuals, but it's not homosexuals. It's like people who are perverts who like it's like older males probably that would hurt younger males or younger children. And at the time that those things were written, that was like an issue in society, especially. I mean, obviously it's always been an issue, but like it was like absolutely considered at the time to be like an okay thing to just like be an older man and like teach a younger boy like how to be a man by like basically raping him. That was just like, and I think that was like, especially in Roman times, that was like very common. Um, but those men that were doing that weren't homosexuals, they were pedophiles. And that's a completely different thing. Um, and I like to always remind people that there are more heterosexual pedophiles in the world than homosexuals. That is the truth. So, pedophilia is not has no more to do with homosexuality than heterosexuality. But in 1946, which is like thousands and thousands of years after any book of the Bible was written, hundreds and hundreds of years after, like, the King James Version, even, which was translated however it was translated. Because every time there's a new version of the Bible, someone is just taking their turn at translating in it. And it doesn't always translate well. I mean, there's always something lost in translation, no matter what. Okay? So the best thing you could do if you wanted to understand the Bible would be to literally learn Greek, like ancient Greek. And then you would be able to read the Bible, and you'd probably still have to study it for years and years and years and years and years. But then you actually might understand what the writers of the Bible meant by their writings. But even then, can we ever fully 100% understand another person's writing? No. There were two different terms that were used. They were combined when they translated and published in 1946, and those words, I'm sure, are somewhere on this site. Where are they? Where are they? Oh, it says it chronicles the discovery of never before seen archives at Yale University, which unveil astonishing new revelations and cast significant doubt on any biblical basis for LGBTQIA plus prejudice, featuring commentary from prominent scholars as well as opposing pastors, including the personal stories of the film's creator. 1946 as at once challenging, enlightening, and inspiring. Okay, I'm looking for the terms. Okay, so the woman who created it, her name is Sharon Roggio, and she is a lesbian, and her father is a pastor, and her father believes that, basically the Bible is absolutely 100% accurate, and everything should be taken from the Bible and used, and like, it doesn't matter if the Bible says some pretty fucked up shit too. Everything is literally how it should be. And it's like they are even telling him, like, okay, but the version you have is from a mistranslated version. And he's like, nope, this is the word of God. And it's like, yes, but it's not even the word of Jesus. Like, Jesus didn't write that, and we're supposed to believe that these other men just like heard the voice of God and then wrote it down. Like, oh, like, are we gonna believe that if we don't believe Mormons? It's like, come on now. So a lot of watching this movie was like, I understand that there's these Christians that realize that they're gay when they're like young, and then they are made to feel like they have to pick one or the other, be themselves as a Christian or be themselves as a member of the LGBTQIA plus communities, and that they can't do both. They can't go both directions. They can't be a combined thing. And I was raised Catholic, so I understand that feeling, but I just feel like I realize that, like, it's all a bunch of bullshit. And I'm free from religion, and it feels so good. And, I still believe there's like a code of ethics we should live by, and like I believe in treating people with respect and love, but I just see so many quote unquote Christians who are not good people, and really, really, really think that their behavior is acceptable because of something they've read in this book called the Bible. And even with the mistranslations, I feel like they're getting it wrong. Like, even I feel like they're getting so much wrong. I also think that people are being misled by religious zealots, that, leaders of churches and stuff that are fucking evil, and they're immoral, and they are hateful and spiteful. They're not good people, and it's probably because, well, there's a lot of reasons for it. And then these beautiful, innocent people follow them, and they end up doing terrible things to their communities and the people around them. And it's just such a fucking crock of bullshit. It's like, I don't go to church at all, and I would never do anything as malicious as these people. So yeah, it's really, really interesting. Where was I going with that? Watching the movie makes me think, like, okay, I'm like, do I need to watch this? Like, these people are all holding on so, tight to, like, the possibility of being able to be gay and Christian. And I get it. It's important to them. They feel like that, being Christian is at their core. I'm just so happy it's not at the core of who I am. This is really cool. This website has, like, all the different people that researched it, producers, different people that contributed in different ways, in all their bios and stuff. They even have at the bottom here the voices, people that spoke within the film, the Reverend who wrote into. Okay, so let me get back to that. The Reverend, it says Reverend Davis S. is the author of a recently discovered letter written in 1959 to the RSV Translation Committee. So it's RSV, I guess, not ASV. Challenging the introduction of the word homosexual into the Bible. Because of David's letter, the committee admitted that the RSV translation was wrong, leading to a change in a later version of the RSV to the more generic phrase sexual perverts rather than a specific condemnation of gay people. So the committee at Yale, they re-looked at it and said, you know what, you're right. Like, they totally were fine with changing that to sexual perverts instead of homosexuals. But the problem is that version had been out from 1946 until 1959. So more than 10 years. And people, it was published. People were reading it. People were using it. And then there were all these Bibles that were offshoots of that. And even though that committee republished and said, hey, we got it wrong, like, this wasn't the actual accurate translation, all these other people said, no, you were totally right. Homosexuals are sinners. Like, this is, you were absolutely right. And there's just so many other areas where, like, the word homosexual was never in any section of the Bible, and they fucking just added it. Also, back in the day, like, people didn't understand homosexuality. I mean, at that time, it was still considered, like, a mental disorder. And then it was actually around the time, a little bit later, I actually don't remember the year that they decided that homosexuality wasn't a mental illness. But it kind of coincided at some point with some part of this. Like, it was very close to maybe 1946 or 1959 or 1960 or something. It feels in my heart like it happened a little bit closer to 1960, because it's like, it's hard to believe how long it takes people to realize things that are so obvious. Like, Gay people don't have a mental illness. Women aren't property. Black people aren't property. It's just like, ugh, why are we so fucking stupid as a species? Um, so, so even after they were like, we got it wrong, all these churches and productions of the Bible that came from that version, they were just like, no, we're not changing it. You totally didn't get it wrong. You were right before. We don't speak Greek and you do, but you were right before. Whatever. Bye. And I think the problem is that people are just so fucking afraid that they're not willing to consider that homosexuality is not a sin. This thing came up in my mind. Okay, so my dad was born and raised Catholic. My dad's dad was German-ish, German American, and his mom was Irish American, but they were both from strict Catholic families, and they baptized all their kids. They, went through First Communion, confirmation, all that shit. I also went through all that shit. My dad really, really leaned into religion because I think he needed someone at so many times in his life, and there was nobody. He was abused pretty severely by my grandpa, physically, emotionally, and his mom loved him and stuff, but I mean, she was standing there watching it happen, kind of, I think. So, and my dad was the oldest of 4 kids, so he kind of like didn't have anybody. He got into a lot of fights. He was like kind of had like his own little gang of teens running around the neighborhood. My dad broke his arm so many times as a kid that when he got drafted into Vietnam, they didn't take him because he couldn't bend his arm to hold a gun properly, because his arm had probably broken at some point in his childhood and they didn't like put a cast on it. He just like healed improperly. That is so fucked up if you think that my dad's dad once smashed his head into the garage floor and could have killed him. The garage floor was cement. I actually see that cement floor every time I go to that house. It's still in our family and it's been painted over several times. But now when I look at it, I think that my dad's head hit it over and over again as a young person. And that's fucked up. So I could understand why my dad would have turned to God when he had like nobody. And he also then turned to alcohol, and that shaped his life a lot too. By the time I came along, my dad had quit drinking, though. He was still a Catholic, still very important to him. My mom was not a Catholic. She was a Methodist. But we always went to church. We were all baptized, Catholic, First Communion, confirmation, all of this shit. And my dad was a usher or a pallbearer, or he was some, whatever the fuck they call it, where he was like a part of the congregation that was like involved in the ritual of mass. And I know when my parents divorced, they stripped him of that, and it like kind of broke my dad's heart because he didn't want to divorce my mom, so that was hard for him. And then the church fucking turned their back on him, and it was like his whole world. So that was a betrayal for sure. Also, don't feel too bad for my dad. I mean, he was a terrible husband for much of the marriage, and like terrible father for much of our lives. But in some ways, he was an awesome father, and I love him. He's dead now, so I love him. He's in heaven or wherever, and I love him. I do. I always did. But let me tell you a fucking side story, which was actually the main story. I'm not a side piece. I'm a main chick. What? My dad realized early in my childhood that I was probably gay or something. And I don't know. My dad had like this like very base knowledge of psychology. He'd taken some courses when he went to college. He never graduated college, but he went for at least 2, maybe 3 years of college and then just never graduated. Almost like what I almost did. Interesting. And exactly what one of my brothers did. Nobody's graduated college except for me. But so, just bringing it back around to me constantly. Fuck. When I was a kid, my dad used to ask me, he'd be like, you think maybe you want to be a girl? And I'd be like, no, ugh, God, ew, shut up. He always thought maybe I wanted to be a girl because I did girly things. I wanted to play with Barbies and pretty ponies, and I really liked dressing up, and I really liked performing and theater and music and arts and stuff like that. And I think I probably dressed up in my mom's clothes a ton of times and painted my nails and tried to hide them plenty of times. But I mean, even when I was like really little, I remember like probably around the age of like 6, my dad asking me that, and me just being like, no, because like in my mind I was like, doesn't fucking matter. Even at 6, I knew it doesn't fucking matter if I want to be a girl. Like I can't. Like there's no room in the world for me to want to be a girl. Because I'm not a girl, and this is 91 or 92, and we're in Michigan, in this like mostly Republican town, although my family is pretty fiercely Democrat. But it doesn't matter. Nobody wanted a fag son or a dyke daughter, especially not if you were religious. Irish Catholic, Protestant, Republican, doesn't matter. Nobody wanted a gay in their family. In 1991, wasn't even that far after the AIDS epidemic like exploded. That was like 80s. I'm not even sure that they were saving that many people in 1991 with like, life-saving medications and stuff. So, yeah, the world was a different place. I remember hearing stories of like my brother saying like, I wanted to get my ear pierced, but Dad said he'd rip it out of my ear. And I was just like, oh shit, there's no way I'm going to be a girl. It's so funny though. By the time I came to be like a teenager, and my dad actually asked me if I was gay, and I just was like, maybe. And then he was fine with it. So much changed. So much changed between my brothers being a teenager and me being a teenager. And of course, like by the time my dad asked, my mom had left him, and they were going through like a very painful 3-year divorce. It was like literally the entire time I was in middle school, there was a divorce happening. And I was like living with my mom predominantly. And I kind of told myself like, well, if my dad doesn't accept me for being gay, then I just don't have a dad anymore. And I don't give a shit. I'm not going to go to his house every other weekend. Fuck him. I shouldn't be put through that if he doesn't accept me for who I am. And I was like, I know my mom will be fine, and my grandma will be fine, and I live with them, and my friends will be fine, and everything will be fine, If I'm confident enough about being gay at school, even the kids at school will be fine, which is exactly what happened. But then my dad was fine. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Awesome. But I think it hurt my dad so much that I didn't want to go to church. And by the way, let's be clear. I never wanted to go to church. That shit, when you're Catholic, is so fucking boring. I mean, these like new evangelical like wonder churches, I mean, they're really putting it on thick to make church interesting. I mean, they're making people cry. They're saying crazy shit. They're having like they got bands upon rock bands, and they've got rap happening. Like they're like using pyrotechnics and shit, smoke and mirrors. I mean, literally, they're just doing everything they can to make people go to church and believe they're fucking bullshit. Catholics at least are like, oh, no, no, no. We tried that when we were a much younger religion. For hundreds of years, we used like incense and like, huge cathedrals with like painted glass, and, we tried to like recreate heaven on earth, and create a place where the poor would come to worship, and it would be the nicest place they'd ever been in their whole lives. And they would just be like, well, this must be, from God. But the Catholics did that a long time ago, and they haven't really. I feel like they just keep using the same old shit. They haven't really changed their. They really don't like to change. The Catholics really don't like to change, um, and they feel they shouldn't have to, kind of. That's, I guess, at least they're consistent. That's kind of cool. Um, but yeah, their masses are fucking boring. So I didn't really ever want to go to church. But my dad really, really was sad when I wouldn't go to church with him anymore. I mean, there was a lot of things that made my dad sad. He got sad a lot, but I think he thought it was really unfair that I should feel that I couldn't be accepted by God because I wasn't accepted by the church. And I know that took a toll on my dad, um, to where he eventually said, you know what? Like, the church is no longer for me. I know my relationship with God, and I love God, and I don't need this fucking church in order to love God. Although he kept going to church. But he didn't always. He was a little bit less devoted, you know, after a while. And I remember hearing a story. I think I heard this story after my dad died from my brother. And by the way, my brother tells some tall tales. So there's a very good chance that this is partially fabricated. But I choose to believe it. And that is that my dad, and I know that he had been asked to be a part of this group called the Knights of Columbus. And the Knights of Columbus is like an elderly Catholic men's group. I don't know if you have to be elderly, but it just happens to be a bunch of old whiteheads. At least any of that I've ever seen. And it's kind of like Shriners, like they're Catholic, but they do good things around the community, and they try to. It's a brotherhood, but it's also about like doing community outreach and stuff. So it sounds pretty fucking cool, except that they still hold pretty tightly to the tenets of the Catholic religion. And what is interesting about this is like the Bible version that the committee at Yale translated, that ended up affecting a lot of the American Bibles we know. I'm not really sure how that affected what the Catholics hold to as their Bible, because like the Catholics, I feel like everything kind of comes from the Vatican. Like there's like this epicenter of where everything we believe comes from. And I'm not really sure. Like, in this movie, there's a lot of pastors. It's very like Protestant, American Protestant shit. I don't know how this committee's mistranslation of the Bible affected the Bibles that Catholics are reading, because Catholics are pretty much separate from Protestants ever since like the Reformation, right? Since the birth of Protestantism, essentially. Um, and Catholics, like I said, they're not really into changing. So I feel like they would have a version of the Bible that they follow, and they probably wouldn't be interested in following a Bible written by any king other than the Pope. And they definitely wouldn't be interested in following a Bible rewritten by a group of scholars at a Ivy League college. So I'm not sure about that. Also, it's important to talk about the fact that like there's plenty of other religions that have issues with homosexuals too. So there is going to be an issue, regardless of whether or not this was mistranslated. There's going to be an issue with gays. I mean, yeah, but if it's possible that the Bible has been misinterpreted, it's also very possible that, you know, other biblical, not biblical, but other spiritual texts for other religions have also been misinterpreted because they're ancient texts and they have been translated many times. And there was, like I said before, always something that's going to be lost in translation. So the story goes, maybe I'll end on this because I feel like I've been recording for 7 years. We're almost at an hour. Cool. The story goes that my dad was asked to join the Knights of Columbus in our hometown or whatever in Michigan. And I'd already been off at college, you know, drinking and fucking and whatever, having fun, being a heathen. My dad had have his leg amputated. He was a diabetic. And I remember like right before he had his leg amputated, I was like home visiting, and he asked me to go with him to the hospital to talk to a dietitian because he had to like really, really try to get his diet under control so he wouldn't lose his leg. And then I tried to help him so much with that. And then I went back to New York, and then, you know, I don't know if it was within the next 6 months, he didn't get his diet under control, had to have his leg amputated. So my dad ended up having his leg amputated from like mid shin down because he had sores on his foot that would not heal. And they were positive that there wasn't enough circulation into his lower leg for anything to heal unless they cut off from like the literally like below the knee, maybe like 4 inches down was gone, because they were not sure they could get anything else to heal because that's how bad the circulation was to his farthest extremities. And so he healed up, and then he got the prosthetic leg, and he lived for, I don't know, they say like your days are numbered after you get your leg amputated at his age for that reason. He was like in his mid 60s, and they were like, you know, it's challenging. And then they were also like, hey, by the way, you've got this other leg that's not doing great. You do need to get your shit together still because we're going to have to take that one too if you don't. So my dad's last years alive were very scary for him, full of anxiety. I'm sure that he turned to God a lot in those last years. But I do think he turned away from the church a lot. And I think a big part of it was because he was just like, you know, you fucking weren't there for me when my wife of 30 years divorced me. You know, you didn't ever really help me that much when I was getting the shit kicked out of me as a kid. Not to mention all the terrible shit that priests were probably doing to kids and nuns were doing to kids when my dad was a kid. I think it just really became so evident to him a little too late that the church was not really there for him. And in fact, the church needed him that whole time. It's like when you have a friend who makes you think that you need them all the time, but then you realize, wait, I don't need them. They actually kind of need me. That's exactly the relationship I feel like my dad found himself having with the church. Of course, this is his experience. He might not agree to that. I don't know. He's dead. He can't speak for himself, so I'm going to make up his story. So my dad goes to this Knights of Columbus meeting with his little gimp leg, and he had a friend who drove him there because his friend was the one who was, inviting him to become a part of it. And they had all these men get up and speak about different things. And at the time, there was a lot of talk about, this might have been like right after gay marriage was legalized or right before, somewhere around that time. They had some guy get up and talk about how, gay marriage is wrong, homosexuals are sinners, it's an abomination, and it's actually very funny because I'd never really heard the word abomination from any kind of Catholic setting. I mean, they would just say it was a sin. Abomination is like a big old, like, American pastoral kind of word, I feel like. But they were just stressing how sinful the gay lifestyle is and how they're perverts, or I don't know. Maybe they didn't say perverts. I don't actually know what they said because I literally heard this story from my brother. But my dad apparently lost his shit. And he stood up and was like, excuse me, like, you're all pieces of shit. You're all a bunch of motherfucking pieces of shit. Like, you guys have no fucking clue what you're talking about. Like, I love my God, and God loves me, and I have a gay son, and my gay son is awesome, and I love my gay son more than anything, and, God loves my son just the way he is, and you should all be fucking ashamed of yourselves. And he lost his shit, and he stormed out of that room, and apparently his friend who drove him there was like, well, shit, I know I drove you here, but I'm not gonna leave with you. I don't know. He probably was like, I don't want them to know I brought him. So apparently his friend stayed until the meeting ended, and then had to go find him, because with my dad's one real leg and his one prosthetic leg, he fucking left the building and just started walking down the street. He was gonna walk home. It's probably winter. I don't know. He could have slipped and fallen in a ditch. His friend had to go pick him up, and he was just like mad as a hornet. And I never knew that because my dad actually never told me that, which I thought was even cooler because, when someone does something, they're like, hey, I defended you today, by the way. It's like, oh, great. And thanks for telling me. Thanks for reminding me that groups of people wish I were dead. I'm so glad that, not that my dad defended me, but that my dad kind of like defended himself. To be able to say to an organization that's just so fucked that, they can fuck off. It's such a good thing. Like that's a come to God moment, My dad didn't need the church to be closer to God. I don't need organized religion to have belief or anything. And I will preach that until I am the most successful cult leader in the fucking world. Just kidding, but only kind of. Should I be a cult leader or a supreme dictator? I haven't decided. I think you should be fucking ashamed of yourself if you let your fear of damnation force you to betray your own child. I think being brave is what we're meant to be. I think we're supposed to love courageously. I know that sounds stupid. I feel like those terms have been, co-opted by like pyramid schemes. Love courageously, sell more juice. I think that love is saying, I love you so much that no matter who you are, no matter what you do, I still love you. And I accept you unconditionally, even if that means that I'm going to die and burn in hell for all of eternity. That's how much I love my son. That's how much I love my daughter. I love my child more than God. But it's so funny. So many people will say, there's only one thing I love more than my kids, and it's God. And it's like, you see their kids go, yeah. It's so fucking dumb, because if you understand anything, you'd understand that loving your kids is loving God. There's no separation. To feel love is to feel God. Period. I don't think I can say anything better than that. I think that's it. You guys, thank you for tuning in to a whole entire hour of me talking. Has it felt good? What are you wearing? Just kidding. Sexual perverts. I wish my laugh weren't so evil. You guys, please rate, review, subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. 5 stars, please, please, please. And if you want to email in to makesexwithmepodcast@gmail.com, that would be awesome. I'd love to receive your email. And you guys, I hope you're filling your holes with old Bibles that you're trying to dispose of. I actually threw away, someone keeps dropping off these little tiny books that's called like Our Daily Bread or something. And I realized that they're only good for like 3 months. It'll be like the May, April, June version. And so we had a bunch of old ones, and I threw it in the garbage. And then I looked at my coworker and was like, oh my God, was that like, it's like really bad? And she was like, I don't know. And I was like, I mean, like, what are you supposed to do with old shit like this? Like, you're supposed to keep it forever. It literally says what months you're supposed to read it in, and they're gone. They're done. They already happened. What am I supposed to do? Do I return it to the church? Do I just throw it up into the air and it evaporates into the clouds? Like, what do I do? Bye-bye.